We are now live. All right. So, welcome everyone. We have some Orchard veterans in the audience as well. But that's about the Orchard 1 edition of Orchard. I will now talk to you about Orchard Core. And why I wanted to bring this talk to you is because if you are doing .NET web development, then perhaps you are still reinventing the wheel with every project, or at least a couple of wheels with every project. And that really shouldn't happen. You should rather use a framework, or rather a suite of frameworks that's suitable for pretty much every project of yours to provide some baseline functionality, to provide a foundation that you build the specifics on. And well, Orchard Core can be a project like that. So why would you use a CMS, a content management system, to begin with? Because Orchard Core is, among others, a CMS. Well, first of all, you avoid that reinventing the wheel part. And secondly, a CMS is always a kind of framework, because you are not just using a CMS for its built-in features, rather you use it as a foundation for a web application development project. At least that's what the topic of today is. And that means that you need to extend that CMS. And when you do that, when you write code that builds on top of the CMS, you are writing that code in some kind of framework. So, of course, we use .NET, we use ASP.NET Core. These are frameworks already, and a CMS always builds on some kind of underlying framework too. But, for example, how you write a plugin for a framework, for a CMS, also provides you with some guidelines on how to structure your code, how to implement APIs, how to model content, which can be a lot of useful guidelines. And of course, it's not just about the code. When you are using a CMS, you get to be part of the community of that CMS and potentially get support from that community, work with other people, be hired, hire people, so, everything that comes with a community. Now, again, of course, we start with the .NET community here, but being a member of a smaller niche community like a CMSs can help you find the right people. And this is Orchard, pretty much. Now, this is the tagline of Orchard Core. I won't read it to you because you can do it quicker, but let's dissect this and let's try to understand what Orchard Core is about. First of all, it's free and open source. Secondly, it's also a modular application. While by default, an Orchard using web application is a monolith, although you can divide it up into microservices, it does provide internal modularization, that framework part that I just mentioned. It's also multi-tenant. That means that you can take a single Orchard Core application and host any number of seemingly independent web applications, websites from it, called tenants. This also allows you to build a software as a service for your clients or a completely public one. And just as a good CMS, Orchard Core is also an application framework that provides you with guidelines on how to write your code. And it's built on top of ASP.NET Core. So everything you know about ASP.NET Core still applies. Let's go into the details. Well, Orchard Core currently targets .NET 6 and 7 at the same time. Come November, when .NET 8 will be released, it will target only .NET 8, because it always targets the latest long-term support version and the latest latest period version of .NET. It's built not just on top of ASP.NET MVC, but ASP.NET Core. It's not just on top of ASP.NET Core, but also on top of ASP.NET Core MVC. It follows the MVC paradigm. It does this internally, but in your code, by the way, you don't necessarily need to follow the MVC paradigm as well. You can use others too. As mentioned, it's open source and it's under the umbrella of the .NET Foundation. What I believe this meetup group is too. It's a very active project with thousands of commits, hundreds of contributors, and a lot of issues on GitHub, but a lot of these issues are actually closed. So it's not just that people are complaining, but the community is also contributing and fixing those bugs, implementing those feature requests. There's, by the way, also an Orchard 1.x. Originally, it was just called Orchard CMS. Now we call it not just Orchard CMS, but also Orchard 1, as opposed to Orchard Core. That's where Orchard started. It was, and it still is, a CMS project built on .NET Framework and the legacy ESP.NET MVC. It's also a huge project, and it's still supported, but it's a maintenance mode. It's a legacy project. New features aren't really going to it. We are just maintaining it to be able to keep those projects up to date that still run on 1.x. But of course, for new projects, use Orchard Core. And where the whole thing started with Orchard 1 was back in 2009, when the first commit appeared on Codeplex. Now, if you haven't heard of Codeplex, Codeplex was the GitHub of Microsoft before Microsoft actually purchased GitHub. And the 1.0 version was released in 2011. And not too long after that, the community started to work on Orchard Core in 2014. But that was those were the very, very early days of .NET Core, if you may remember. And .NET Core continued to be very unstable, changing very rapidly and changing a lot of things even between versions. And that means that while Orchard Core, I think, was production ready well before that, it was in 2021 when we said that, okay, Orchard Core is now really 1.0, and currently we are at 1.7. Now, why I'm talking to you about this is because I'm from a company called Lombic Technologies, and we pretty much built our company on top of Orchard. We started with Orchard 1 a decade ago, and then now we are mostly focusing on Orchard Core. We are the biggest Orchard team out in the world. We are, I think, the worldwide market leaders when it comes to Orchard services. And we have worked with companies like Microsoft itself, or Fortune 500 companies like Live Nation, or even institutions like the Smithsonian Institution. Now, why would you use Orchard Core? Well, first of all, it's everything that you know about the ASP.NET Core and the ASP.NET Core MVC, plus a lot of stuff. So your current knowledge still applies. You are not creating an Orchard Core application. You are creating an ASP.NET Core web application, and you add Orchard to it. And with Orchard, you get a lot of goodies. First of all, since it's for a bigger part of CMS, you get a great content model that's highly flexible and extensible. You get all the basic stuff like user management, media management, mentioned multi-tenancy, but also workflows, audit trail, etc. And this is also a personal thing of mine. How I became a professional .NET developer is by joining the Orchard community. Because if you are in the beginning of your career, or if you are quite new to .NET, it's a good thing to join such a huge, quality, active open source project, because by interacting with the community, contributing to the project, you can become a lot better developer. Also because Orchard is developed by some very smart people, including some people who work on ASP.NET itself. And of course, Orchard is also more than just the code. If you have a community, it's not a huge one, but it's still quite sizable with a couple thousand people, but it's still quite a niche one. There are some helpful people, and we also have a yearly conference The last one was online with around 200 attendees, and this picture is from an in-person conference of ours that we held in New York. Now, enough talk. Let's check out what Orchard can do. So now I will switch over to Chrome and show you a couple of examples. This is actually mixing mostly Orchard Core with some Orchard One sites. So let's see. First of all, a website for a Transformers game. Now, this is not a very complex website. It's actually a mini site, but it's about a quite famous franchise that I'm pretty sure you have heard of. And this is, by the way, also an example of how you can use Orchard Core to efficiently pump out similar sites or mini sites or sites in a multi-tenant environment very quickly after each other. But some other big names like the Royal Veterinary College of London also uses Orchard. And as you can see, this site also has a lot of cat pictures. It's already great. But Orchard can be used for sites that are not just content heavy, but offer some kind of more involved functionality to the visitors, like this one. Fly Egypt is a website for an airline, and apart from having content that you would expect from a typical airline website, it also has a booking feature here. So you can also build a booking environment or booking platform with Orchard Core. I already mentioned Live Nation. That's something that we at Lombic work with. It's a huge company, and one of their brands is House of Blues. This is the brand for something like between 50 and 100 event venues, pubs, clubs, restaurants. And well, this one here is a collection site for dues, and it's a multi-tenant one, where each of these venues have their own sites. Now, governments also use Orchard. This one here is a municipal government in the US. The city of Santa Monica, which is close to Los Angeles, or rather part of greater Los Angeles, is using Orchard Core for all of their web presence. Now, on the US federal government levels, on the highest one, we also have Orchard Core users, namely the Smithsonian. The Smithsonian Folkways Recordings, which is kind of a division of the Smithsonian Institution, has been using Orchard for many years now. And this site is built on Orchard Core, but they actually have two more, these Folklife and Festival websites, which look very similar, but they are actually Orchard One sites. We migrated the Folkways websites from Orchard One, working with them previously as well. And in between the municipal and federal level, we also have US states using Orchard. The Employment Security Department of Washington State has this website, which is Orchard 2. And if you are interested in other examples, I recommend you check out Show Orchard. Show Orchard is our website that gathers Orchard sites that we think are good examples. So if you like to check out what you can do with Orchard, including Orchard One and Orchard Core, I encourage you to visit this site. And of course, if you have built something cool on Orchard, let us know and we can include it here. So now we have covered the basics and we have seen a couple of examples of Orchard, but we haven't worked with Orchard yet. So let me switch over to Visual Studio now, and we will start an Orchard Core application locally and play around a little bit with it. What I have here is a demo app. And this solution contains, as you can see, 3 projects. a web project in the root, a so-called theme project, and a module project. The module project is an Orchard plugin that contains functionality, and themes are Orchard plugins that contain styling, the look and feel of the website. I, by the way, generated this with the code generation templates of Orchard Core. And let's take a look at the web project first. As you can see, this is a pretty standard ASP.NET Core web project. Pretty much what makes it an Orchard application is that I added these two packages. And this package pulls in everything from Orchard Core. Now, as mentioned, Orchard Core is highly modularized. It's split up in something like 200 packages that are available on NuGet, and you don't have to use all of that. But you can utilize just what you need from there. If you want just the CMS features, you can use that. If you just want the user management features, you can just use that. So you can pick and choose, and in the end, Orchard can be whatever you would like it to be. Now, I'm including everything from Orchard here just for this demo, just to be able to show you well, everything. But again, that's not necessarily what you want to do. So now I'm starting this application with Ctrl F5, and soon in the browser, we'll see the setup screen of Orchard Core. By the way, Orchard Core also has a feature called Auto Setup that on the first request can set up the website with some configuration that you prepare without you visiting the setup screen. And as you can see, the setup screen is pretty simple, so let's check it out in a little bit more detail. Well, first of all, it has localization. So localization is available in Orchard both for the UI labels and also for the content. Then we have to name our site somehow. Let me call it just demo. And then we have to select a so-called recipe. Now, a recipe in Orchard Core is pretty much a JSON file that contains some content and configuration. And this is very useful because this allows you two things. First of all, you can export content and configuration from one Orchard Core site and import it on another one. This way you can, for example, move content from a staging environment to a production one. And secondly, you can use recipes to create kind of templates for web applications. The setup recipes that we see here are examples of that approach. These are the built-in setup recipes of Orchard Core. These are kind of websites templates that are included out of the box. But you can also create your own ones, and you can also build on top of these built-in ones. Here, we'll just use the blog one. So you wouldn't guess, but the blog setup recipe is about setting up a blog. It sets up a fairly simple blog to provide you with a jump start for creating your own blog. We can also select a time zone for the website, but this can be changed later. Almost everything here can be changed later, except for the recipe. And well, the database can be changed, but it's a little bit more work than just flipping a switch. Because Orchard supports multiple database engines. We recommend SQLite for local development because that's just a simple flat file. You don't need to install anything for it, and you can very quickly just delete this file and wipe the site and start over. But you can also use something like SQL Server, which is what we recommend for production apps. But let's use SQLite for now. And then I will create our first user account. And this default admin user can be changed later. Of course, you can add further users. And I will use the very safe password1 password here. Now, this is something that we use for local development usually, but of course, don't use this in production. And now after click Finish Setup, the setup has run. Orchard has taken the blog recipe and created the whole application. As you can see, this is indeed a simple blog. We have some basic title here. We also have a blog post with a title, subtitle, some metadata here, and also some categorization and tagging. And if you open it, well, we can see that it also has an image and some text. We also have a menu at the top here with a button to the home page and also a link to an about page, which is, well, a simple static content page. All right, so far so good. Let me go to the admin and again use our very safe password and log in with our default admin user. And well, here is our admin site for Orchard. As you can see, it's pretty straightforward. And by the way, there's also a dark mode if you would like to use that. And if you could
there is a
check
question from Pedro. Sorry.
Oh, sure.
About so he's asking. I think he's asking about the database if he can use any ORM like entity framework, but I'm not sure about the question. Is the question? Sorry, I don't understand quite well. So Pedro, is the question around if you can use any databases as long as there is entity frame? I don't know. What is the question? Sorry, I don't understand.
Sorry, no, if Orchard use internally entity framework or any ORM or internally, what is using Orchard?
Sure. Dapper, sorry, Orchard uses not these Dappers. Yeah, Orchard uses Dapper behind the scenes, and it actually uses that via a tool called, or a library called YesSQL. Now, YesSQL is pretty much a document database engine on top of a SQL database, because documents and the document database approach is a very suitable approach for a CMS like Orchard Core. But in the end, you have a SQL database behind the scenes that Orchard uses with YesSQL and Dapper by default. But if you like to interact with the database from your own code, you can either use these, or you can also use Entity Framework if you like, or any other ORM or micro ORM. You basically get a database connection that you can do anything with.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. So back to our admin. Here under the blog menu, we have our single blog post. And if you check it out, it just looks what you'd perhaps expect. We have our title here. We have the body, the text of the blog post. We can also edit its URL as the permalink here. And the other details are here too. Now, if you want to edit, we can just write something here. But before that, let me show you this live preview feature, which is a pretty cool one. This preview feature provides you with, well, a live preview. So if I start to write here on the left, you see that immediately everything changes here on the right in the context of the site. But if we go to the blog post, then nothing yet changed because I didn't save it, of course. But we can just publish this, and then, of course, we have now the new blog post out there. We can also take a look at the other content items, and this about page is, for example, here. We also have the categories and the text for the blog, as well as a menu item for our main menu here, what you can see here. But let's check out this about page. And yeah, again, we get something pretty expected. this page also has a title, it also has a URL, and it also has a body. And well, the editor experience is something quite similar. But let's compare it with the blog post now. So let me go back to the blog post and let's compare the two. Do you notice some similarities? And of course you do. Both of these have a title, and both of these have a permalink. These two look basically the same, and both of them have a body, although the blog post has something called a markdown body, and the article, this page that you have on the left, has a body called HTML body. Now, what is happening here? We are seeing here the content model of Orchard Core in action. Namely, what we are seeing is that on the left, we have a content item. We are editing a given content item. And that content item has a content type called article. Its content type is called article. And the right-hand side, we are editing a blog post content item. So we are editing a content item that has the content type blog post. And if we want to see the kind of the schema of these content items, the configuration, the content definition, then we can also check this out here under this menu. And here, if we open our blog post, we'll see kind of the schema of how all blog posts work. What we see here is the blog post content type, the configuration of the blog post content type. And if you scroll down a little bit, we'll see that we have here under parts, we have something called title and auto route. And these are the building blocks of content types. These are called content parts. In Orchard, you have the basic building block of a content part, like something that handles a title or something that handles a permalink. And you take these content parts and with them, you build content types. So in this case, we have the blog post content type that uses the title and the auto route parts. And those content parts are reusable building blocks. So blog post is using title and auto route. But if we go back here to the content types and select article, which is, of course, our about page, for example, then we see that it also has title. It also has auto route. So these two fields here are exactly the same thing. And this is what makes the content model of Orchard Core very powerful, because you can take these content parts and mix and match them. You can create your own content parts as well. You can take content type that's built into Orchard, like this article here, and you can change it. I could remove its style, or I can change its configuration. You can also create your own content types if you like, with built-in or your own content parts. And all of this can happen, by the way, both from the admin and both from code, if you prefer that. Now, one further thing that's part of the Orchard content model and what's quite useful is content versioning. You may notice that previously I clicked the publish button for our blog post, but there's also this thing called draft. So let me actually show you something else here. And that something else is called audit trail. Now, I would like to show you how content versioning works, but to see that on the UI, we'll need to enable a feature called audit trail. Because behind the scenes, when you change content in Orchard, then you are not actually overwriting content, but you are saving a new version of it. To make these versions visible and to see how these versions changed, an audit trail feature, a feature called audit trail is necessary. And by the way, what we are looking at here are all the built-in features of Orchard. And these are all in their separate modules. Remember that I told you that Orchard Core is highly modularized? Well, this is where all those modules are. Something like 100 modules or around 100. These are the built-in ones, by the way. And of course, you can create your own one. But for now, I will just enable this built-in audit trail module. And once that's done, I will also go here and change its configuration, because by default, it's not saving any records for any of the content items. We first need to select the content type, where if you edit an item of that content type, then a record in this audit trail should be saved. I will save blog post and article for now. And now, if we go to our blog and try to edit our blog post, here under the audit trail menu, we'll see the changes. So let's see it in action. Let me change the title of this blog post and let me save it as a draft. Now, previously I hit publish, but now that I have saved it as a draft, then that means that the published version didn't change. This is just a draft for us. This is a draft that only we as administrators can see. And if I refresh audit trail here in the left, you see that it recorded the saving of a new draft version. And now if I publish it, at this point, this is out in public, and audit trail also has a new published event. And if we change this further, like this, and I can change something in the body here too, and I hit publish, then again, we'll see an audit trail item recorded. Audit trail is basically a tool for you to know who changed what in the system. And well, here we can see that the user admin did these changes to that content item. And if we go into the details, we can also see about some metadata about who did the change and when, and we can also see a diff view of what exactly changed. As you can see that I changed the title and I also changed the markdown body here. You can also, in this audit trail list, you can also restore previous versions, and you can also restore deleted versions. So when you are deleting a content item in Orchard Core, you are actually doing a soft delete. The content still remains in the database, it will be just inaccessible. And here from the audit trail, you can also restore it. Another quite cool feature that I wanted to show you here, what we also need to enable is workflows. Now, usually when you extend the functionalities of Orchard, then you do that from code. So you create your Orchard Core solution, just as I've shown you. And then, well, you create your own module and you create your own theme to extend what's built into Orchard. But there's also the workflows feature that you can use to kind of use a visual programming approach to extend the behavior of Orchard Core right from the admin. So let me enable workflows and let's check out what it does. Here you can create a workflow. Let me just call it demo. And once you have a workflow, you get this canvas where you can put events that would start this workflow and tasks. Because a workflow is all about events and tasks. Something happens in Orchard Core and then you do something else. What I would like to show you here is an example of displaying a notification when the user publishes a content item. So something quite simple, just to give you an idea of how this works. So I will add an event here. And as you can see, there are a lot of built-in events. I will use this content published one. And by the way, I'm repeating myself here, but this is also extensible. So every box you see here comes from some module. They come from multiple modules actually, and you can also add ones from your own modules. You can create your own workflow events, and you can create your own workflow tasks. But for now, we'll use this content published event for blog posts. And let me configure this as the startup event of this workflow. And then that will start our workflow, and then we can do things. If I add a task, we can select what to do. And I will use this notify task here just to display notification. But as you can see, there's a lot more you can do. You can do all kinds of things with users, with content, and you can even do some proper visual programming, like with for and for each loops, and even if-else conditions. But let me use the notify task here, and let me take some code from the clipboard here. This notify task will display, well, a notification, and this will be the message that we'll use. And as you can see, this has support for Liquid. Now, if you haven't heard of Liquid, Liquid is a markup language or a templating language invented by Shopify. And it's designed to be an easy-to-use, safe templating language that you can use even in a public SaaS. In Orchard Core, you can use it for two things. First of all, you can use it for templating, as you can create your HTML templates with Liquid. That's very useful, but I personally like to use Razor for that, but it's also supported. And secondly, you can use Liquid to do some dynamic string substitution for strings like this message here. And as you can see, I used a Liquid tag here, which is accessing the ASP.NET Core username. So let's save that. And I will connect the two. So now when a content is published, we'll get a notification. And let's go back to the blog. And I won't change anything here, just hit publish. And indeed, it worked. So, well, great. You can use workflows for much more. You can send emails, call webhooks, do pretty much any of the important functionality within Orchard programmatically like that. And again, you can also extend it. But this was just scratching the surface. Orchard has a lot more features. For example, it has search with Lucene or with Elasticsearch. It also offers, of course, role-based access control. So here's our admin user that we created, which is a local admin, a local user. But you can also have federated logins and single sign-on too. So while this is a local user account, you can also let your users log in with Microsoft work and personal accounts, with Google, Facebook, Twitter accounts, everything. And since it's role-based access control, there are, of course, also roles. And of course, you can also add your own roles, and you can change these roles. For example, user accounts with the role moderator have these permissions. And as you can see, this is a very long list of permissions. These are built-in permissions of Orchard Core, but you can also add your own permissions, of course. And there's a lot more. So under this features menu, as I mentioned, you can enable a lot more, including GraphQL APIs. But I would like to show you a little bit how you can also write your own code. And for that, we'll write a little bit of code in our own theme. Because remember that in Visual Studio, I mentioned you that, I mentioned you that I've created a theme project. Well, a theme is a kind of plugin in Orchard Core that that manages the look and feel of the website. And this demo theme that I have created here is actually listed under themes here. So it's something that we can enable, and we can make it the current theme. So let's take a look at how our site now looks, and it's really ugly. So this is our website now. Good job, I guess. But the reason why it's so ugly is because our theme contains nothing yet. It only contains a simple or a single liquid template file, which, as you can see, is kind of the foundation of a basic HTML document, but it doesn't contain much. This is where theming starts. You would create your theme, again, with Orchard's code generation templates, for example, and then you would start adding your own markup and your own CSS, JavaScript files, graphics, fonts, whatever you need. This generated theme, of course, just contains some very simple basics that you can start working with. And this is using Liquid, but then again, Razor templates are also available. So let's actually write some code and let's check out whether it works. So let me add some, let me add some code here. And of course, it should be hello world. And now if I refresh on the left-hand side, we see that that hello world actually is displayed. So this is how you would work. Change the styling on the right and see it working on the left, or vice versa. If you use .NET's hot reload, then of course you can do something similar with C# code as well. Speaking of C# code, let me quickly show you some C# code, and I won't go into our sample solution here because writing some code that actually does something would be a bit too long. Instead, what I would like to show you is the source code of Orchard Core itself. Because, well, Orchard Core is open source, we can take a look at its source. And this is it here. As you can see, it's a pretty large solution with more than 200 projects. But, well, it's the whole of Orchard, including tests and development tools. And what we can do is check out how the title part works. So we have seen that when we edit a blog post, it has this title, which is managed by the title part. Now, let's check out that in the code. If we go to the source and among the CMS modules, we find the title module, we'll be able to do just that. Because this is the module here that provides the title part functionality. And here under models, we can find the title part. And that's the content part. Of course, this is not all the code, but this is where the magic starts. If you want to create your own content part, and you can do everything in your own module that you can see in these built-in modules too, if you would like to create your own content parts, then you would start with a class like this that derives from content part. And you would also need to add some templates for this. So, for example, this template here is the one that drives this editor field here. So as you can see, here's that input field for this field. And this is just a fairly small snippet from a whole form. So what we see on the right-hand side here is what's necessary just for the title part, just for this title editor. It doesn't contain the rest of the editor form here. That's because Orchard is well modularized. So all of these content parts that we see in action here on the left-hand side just provide little bits of the layout, little bits of the functionality like we see on the right-hand side from this template here. And when we display this blog post, this this display of the title is also driven by the title part. So both on the admin area and on the front end is the title part that manages the whole thing. And that one actually comes from this template here. So just displaying an H1 with the title. Now, there's a bit more when it comes to developing a content part, but this is all you can check out in detail from Orchard source code or from one of the tutorials that I will soon show you. But before that, if you like to put your Orchard Core site somewhere, then you have a lot of options because, well, it can run anywhere where the cross-platform .NET of today runs, because Orchard Core is also cross-platform, of course. And if you want to use the cloud, like Azure, you can use something like Azure App Services, which is pretty much IIS in the cloud. So IIS can be utilized as well. And an Orchard Core using web application can also be containerized with something like Docker. Furthermore, if you would like to have an Orchard Core site, but you don't want to host it yourself, you can check out our software as a service called .nest. There you can sign up, and with 2 clicks, you can get an Orchard Core site. Of course, that's more limited than running Orchard yourself, but it's much more convenient. You don't have to care about hosting, and you don't have to care about maintaining Orchard Core up to date. But still, it's quite flexible. So you can, as an admin of your site, you can do everything from the Orchard admin, and you can also create your own themes. So what I've shown you with writing Liquid, that you can still do. And if you like this, and if I really hope you did, then here's some further reading for you to get to know Orchard Core. First of all, the official website is a good starting point. You can also reach the official documentation from there. You can also check out Orchard Dojo, which is our learning and Orchard Core training site of ours at Lombic. Apart from some training materials, like the Dojo Course 3 that guides you through becoming an Orchard developer, we also post Orchard Core news there. Pretty much every week we post an Orchard Core related blog post about what happened in the community and in the project. We also send that out as a newsletter, and sometimes we also publish tutorials there as well. Furthermore, if you like to learn from code, so if you're like me, that tutorials are nice and videos are nice, but I want to see the code and I want to play with it, then I encourage you to check out our training demo module, which is an Orchard Core module that's only there for learning purposes. So it contains more comments than code. It guides you through all the basic Orchard APIs and all the important stuff that you need to know as an Orchard Core developer. I will also post these links under the meetup event on meetup.com. And that was it from me. So thank you very much for your attention. Feel free to get in touch with me. I would be more than happy to talk about Orchard Core. And we can have some further questions now if you have any.
Well done. Yeah, I like it. Pedro, do you have any questions? Nope. Sounds like we don't have any.
Yeah, everything was clear, or nothing was clear.
Well, Pedro says that has to play with it, but
yeah, you are welcome to do that. And there's a migration path from Orchard 1 to Orchard Core. I linked that in the chat. It's an article available on Orchard Dojo. We also have some tooling to make that easier, to make the content migration easier. although that being said, Orchard 1 and Orchard Core are very different. Well, they are fundamentally different since the frameworks are different. So you pretty much have to re-implement your website or web application on top of Orchard Core, but all of the major concepts are the same. The idea is the same. Some of the APIs are the same or very similar. So if you are good with Orchard 1, it should be pretty straightforward.
Okay, well, that was great. Thank you very much. And,
thank you, everyone.
We'll wait for the recording. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, Sultan. Thank you.